Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we're continuing our discussion of the Elsweyr chapter coming soon to the Elder Scrolls Online. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about build diversity and supporting different playstyles in the game, especially after reviewing the Elsweyr patch notes. While the overall intended effect of these patch changes as described by the lead combat developer Brian Wheeler has been to normalize abilities across the board, my main criticism has been that in many cases, this seems to lead to just this feeling of homogenization between builds. I mean, certain buffs have been removed from classes that had access to them basically forever since the beginning of the game, and many higher damaging skills have been reduced, making them feel less viable in certain situations and for certain playstyles, especially in PvP. Now, I've reviewed all of these changes in detail in other videos on my channel. If you're interested in checking those out, I'll leave links for those videos in the description below. So let's jump right into the topic for this video, and that's the changes to the two-hand ability known as Uppercut or Dizzy Swing. Let me give you a little bit of ESO build history. So traditionally, Dizzy Swing or Uppercut has really been a staple of both Stamina Dragonite and Stamina Sorcerer builds in PvP just for a long time, for a long time. It's also been used more recently by Stamina Wardens as well. It's a playstyle that I would call high risk and high reward. So by specializing into physical or weapon damage, these builds can land big damage on just a single uppercut cast. And with the Dizzy Swing morph, that cast would also stun the target and basically leave them vulnerable to being hit by an ultimate like Dawnbreaker or Dragon Leap, and then finally being finished off by an execute ability. So this was a really powerful combo, and it was also really satisfying to land on these builds if you could land it in the first place. Now this is where the idea of a high risk, high reward combo becomes interesting. Basically, if a player dodged or outmaneuvered your first uppercut, the whole entire combo just was wasted. So you had to be in melee range, you had to deal with the 1 second cast time, and it was likely that an experienced player could counter your burst combo and leave you vulnerable to counterattack. And that's what made this playstyle really interesting. The sense of risk-reward made it satisfying to land it if you could, and it took good timing, it took skill, and it took speed, and it took experience to do so. And it was a valid playstyle for a long time in the Elder Scrolls Online PvP. So this actually isn't the first time that Uppercut builds have been nerfed for the PvP side of the game. It actually used to be that Uppercut had both effects of the morphs on one skill called Wrecking Blow. Not only did you get the stun basically, but you also got Empower on your next attack. That Empower was also really special because back in the day, it would empower any attack, not just light attacks from your weapons. So if you managed to land a second Wrecking Blow, it would hit for even more damage, or you could Wrecking Blow into an ultimate like Dragon Leap for a really strong burst combo. It was insane on some builds. All that went away over the past few years, eventually leading to the two split effect morphs that we have now, one with the Empower and one with the Stun. Now, Uppercut 2H builds really haven't been popular over the past year, I would say, since Somerset for a lot of other reasons too. Many builds in PvP now run higher health, for example, which makes it less likely that your uppercut is going to actually be effective against a high health opponent. We've also had the Swift Jewelry trait and other skills come into the game that provide major expedition. This means that a lot of builds right now are just too fast to land an uppercut on reliably. And what we see as a result now in PvP is a stronger push towards things like dot-based builds, dual-wield bleed builds, one-hand and shield builds. So the power of Uppercut has already been falling away for a long time. And with an even lower tooltip now on the Uppercut skill, I think this playstyle is really in danger of falling away completely from the PvP game in ESO. So let's look at the proposed changes to the skill in a little bit more detail. Basically, they reduced the overall damage by 14%, and the intended benefit here, at least how it's described in the patch notes, is to increase the overall DPS of the skill by 6%. And that's when the skill is used like a spammable skill, and it says here in a quick succession, basically trying to make it more of a viable DPS skill. Now, this is, this could be good news for you PvE players out there that are trying to create interesting and effective two-hand builds for PvE content, but I think it really does show an overall lack of understanding in terms of how the ability is used in PvP. I don't think the development team has really considered that, or maybe they did, but it's just not important. It doesn't seem important to them because this provides zero benefit to PvP, and that's one of the main issues with this change, in my opinion. PvP is primarily about movement and maneuvering on the battlefield. In most cases, your enemy does not stand in one place, right? So it's rare that you'll be able to land more than 2 uppercuts in a row on a single player. In fact, you'll be lucky now to land it once on an experienced player. On newer players, yeah, it's not so much of an issue, but on an experienced player, it'll be a challenge to land it one time. So with that in mind, the fact that it's a DPS increase is not helpful. What we have just for PvP then is a significant loss in burst damage. So what does the nerf to this skill mean overall in terms of PvP balance, play styles, and build diversity? Well, again, I think the two-hand uppercut build will basically start to be a thing of the past. In general, you probably will see more PvP builds go to two-handed as a back bar only, using the skill line basically just for support skills like rally or forward momentum, crit rush, stampede, which I think is kind of sad. We saw this patch that Carve is also losing the minor heroism buff, so that's even one less support buff for two-handed builds. Speaking of Carve though, we did see a buff to that skill and Brawler in terms of damage output. I know some people on the PTS forums have been looking at either Carve or Brawler being used as a replacement possibly for Dizzy Swing on some builds, and I think that's true. You probably will see many people choosing to slot Carve or Brawler instead of Dizzy Swing. This makes a lot of sense on builds that already have a lot of AoE burst potential, especially like Stamina Warden, for example. However, I think the potential for Carve as a spammable is still kind of limited to if you have the Master Two-Hander or not. It still might not be viable unless you have that Master 2H. So that is a possibility, but again, kind of limiting to be truly effective in PvP if you don't have that item, whereas with Dizzy Swing, you didn't need a master weapon to be effective with it. Lastly, I think you'll see a further increase of builds using dual wield, bleeds, and sword and shield. Sword and shield still gives you lots of tankiness, plus buffs, debuffs. Heroic Slash is still extremely strong, does really nice damage, can even be used as a spammable in some cases, and dual wield bleeds are still as strong as ever. So overall, yes, I think unfortunately things are not looking good for the old 2H Dizzy Swing builds. I feel for you guys if you enjoyed that play style, that unique risk-reward kind of feeling in the game, because I enjoyed it as well. Now, it's not too late to fix all of this. I think there's actually a really simple solution. I think the first fix would be just put the damage back onto Dizzy Swing that it had and make it like the default PvP morph of the ability. You can leave the 1 second cast time, that's fine. Hopefully the changes mentioned in the patch make it slightly easier to land 1 or even 2 of those in a row, that's fine. It's not going to be overpowering. It hasn't been overpowering in like 3 years, so I don't think it's an issue. I think it's still going to be a challenging skill that rewards the risk that you take. Now, on the PvE side of things, if ZeniMax wants a true DPS spammable with this skill, then all they really have to do is take the other morph of the skill called Wrecking Blow and just make it instant cast. Obviously, they need to lower the damage, probably a lot, make it in line with other instant cast spammable abilities, think like Surprise Attack or Crushing Weapon. But I think that's fine, and players have actually been asking for an instant cast version of this skill for a long time. This would give a lot more diversity, again, to Stamina Dragon Knight, Stamina Sorcerer builds in PvE content, giving them access to a single target spammable skill in a two-hand skill line. So again, I think it's an easy fix. One morph, PvE, make it instant cast, lower the damage. Keep the Empower if you want. The other morph, PvP, keep the 1 second cast, keep the high damage and the stun. I think it's a win-win for everybody. That's what I would like to see, at least as a PvP player. I'm all about build diversity. Having access to different playstyles is what makes the game fun for me. And I don't know, maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this skill and how it's being changed. Will you still use it in PvP if you've used it in the past? If you're a PvE player, are you looking forward to the changes to the skill? Let us know in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this discussion, please make sure to like the video, crush that like for me, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, for lots more Elsweyr updates and build videos coming soon. And until then, I'll see you guys around in the next video. Thanks.